broadcast for shooters, hunters, and gun enthusiasts. This is the Firearms Radio Network. The bandwidth for this episode of Gun Guy Radio is sponsored by Patriot Patch Company. PatriotPatch.co.
Hello and welcome to episode 182 of Gun Guy Radio. This is the podcast that shines a positive light on the firearms lifestyle. I'm your host, Ryan Machad, and this is your weekly dose of positive firearms talk without the politics. This week, I'm joined by Joel from Rock Island Auction Company to discuss the auction business, how it works, and some of the cool and interesting firearms they get to deal with. So as always, please consider supporting the Firearms Radio Network by shopping Amazon using our Amazon affiliate link at firearmsradio.tv/Amazon. A portion of your purchase will go towards helping the FRN create awesome pro-gun content like this show. Also, check out the Huckleberry Patch from the Patriot Patch Company. So, Joel, it's great to have you on Gun Guy Radio. First time to have you on the show.
All right, I'm excited to be here.
So, Joel and I actually got a chance to meet at NRA Show 2015. Got to check out the great display that Rock Island had there. It was really, really something to see. So we'll get into that in the main topic. But before we head into the main topic, just want to do the bullpup shoot announcement. There's a link in the show notes. That'll be happening in Mount Carroll, Illinois, I believe, in the mid to late September. So be sure to go to the show notes, gunguyradio.com/182 to check out that link.
Do you shop on Amazon? How about your spouse? Does your mom? Does your company? Why not use the Firearms Radio Network's Amazon affiliate link next time you shop Amazon? Bookmark firearmsradio.tv/Amazon or click through the Amazon link in the right-hand corner of firearmsradio.tv. Get it? Got it? Amazon it.
So most people think of buying firearms as a simple go to the gun shop and pick out what I want from the case. It's not really a big deal. But what if you want a firearm that's rare, collectible, valuable, or not something that's really available anywhere else? I think that's sort of where the auction house can come in and really help you get what you really want down to the specifics of it. So before we get into the actual auction business itself, Joel, how did Rock Island Auction Company get started?
Oddly enough, with gas stations. Our owner and President Pat Hogan, when he got out of the Navy in about, I think that was, they said 74, he got out of the Navy, went to college, and came back to the Quad Cities, and he started a gas station. And that gas station, he's kind of been a serial entrepreneur ever since. Started with a gas station, moved into gas station car washes. He was winning a lot of awards, and it turned into, a whole host of gas stations, which then turned into... They had video stores with that, and there was a local chain in our area, the Quad Cities, for a good long time called Hogan's Video that a lot of people still remember. And then they turned into photo processing, and that was kind of the beginning of the auction business for them. When they did their early 90s this photography side business, where they were actually taking photos for a local riverboat casino, when those still had to be on the water around here, according to the laws of the great state of Illinois. Then they started designing auction catalogs for actually two other auction companies, and they realized, we could probably do this ourselves. Especially in 91, they produced two books actually on firearms. One of them is Luger, the multinational pistol, which is a pretty well-known book for Lugers. And then they started running firearms auctions, actually out of one of the garages of Mr. Hogan's other businesses. And from there, it's grown ever since.
Well, that's the thing you notice with, especially with Rock Island, the photos are phenomenal. Because if you aren't following their Facebook page, you really should be. Because there's some phenomenal stuff up there. I know just this morning you had posted a picture of I believe it was a side hammer revolver that was engraved by Gustav Jung, right?
Yeah, master engraver Gustav Jung, a Colt 1855 side hammer, and that in and of itself would be a fantastic gun. They happen to have it in a Buell presentation case, B-U-H-L presentation case. The Colt brought back a few of them from across the pond when he was over there visiting, and then used them for presentations to royalty and things like that. And they're phenomenal cases. They're very, very rarer than the guns themselves, and we don't get to say that very often about just a case.
Yeah, it definitely, because you could take a picture with a telephone and have a decent picture of a firearm, but you guys really go to a different level there, and that's really the key, obviously, because some people you don't actually have on the premises during the auction, so they need to be able to see what they're going to be buying.
Correct. And the photography is something they've been very, very proud of for years. They always consider themselves leading the pack technology-wise. They're the first to use digital photography and going to X amount of standards and doing that. And now they have a setup that they've been very pleased with, obviously, to represent the guns as they are. No better, no worse, just how you'd see them as if you were in person. They have to be beautiful photographs, but they also have to be accurate. There's a lot of reputation at stake there, and a lot of people who are either going to be very happy or not if you represent them not how they are.
So in terms of the auction process, what makes that process different from most other transactions like you have? You go to a store, you pay a set price. Mm-hmm. You pick out exactly what you want then and there, but there's probably multiples of exactly what you want, so it's not like you're getting a one-of-a-kind deal or something like that. So what can make the auction different and sometimes maybe a little bit daunting to people who don't understand how it works?
Well, there's a lot of terms, just vocabulary that you don't come across every day for like a sealed bid or an absentee bid. I mean, sometimes just learning the new jargon of a new sales format can be a bit daunting. I'd say it differs more from gun stores because there are other people trying to buy the same thing you are. That's obviously quite a bit different. Both processes do have a lot of research. Obviously, before you buy a gun, you should research it and see if it's going to have the features you want, how reliable it is, how it's going to fit, how you plan on using it. Our guns you should definitely also research, and most people have researched themselves. I mean, if you want a certain type of M1 guarantee, people probably have researched that and know, but you're not researching, a lot of technical specifications. A lot of time you're researching history, its origins, its provenance, where it came from. Is this authentic? How authentic is it? Things like that that'll differ quite a bit than going to pick up a new SIG in the store for your everyday carry.
Right, like especially the provenance. I mean, I believe it had seen one of the baby Lugers that you guys had, and it was Georg Luger's personal carry pistol, perhaps? Yes, and the internet will be very pleased to hear you properly pronounce Georg. We took some heat for calling him George Luger in a recent video. Sorry, Mr. Luger. Yeah, we had a prototype baby Luger in a prior auction that went very well. But this is George Luger's personal carry pistol, and it's been documented in several books by several very well-known authors. So that's as far as German collecting gets, it's got to be, if it's not the pinnacle, it's pretty darn close. Now, do you find that auctions tend to attract the high-end collectors as opposed to just everyday people looking for an older firearm? I know my neighbor, for instance, he attends auctions, but he purchases like older, typically more beat-up Smith & Wesson revolvers at a decent price. He considers them shooters. They're not, if you were to look at them, maybe like in a pawn shop, you might even pass them over because you go, the finish is terrible or something like that. He looks for the diamonds in the rough that may not look great, but they're shooters. But do you find there's more higher-end collectors in the auction world as opposed to people that are just looking for shooters?
It's a good question. We certainly have tried to cater to both levels, just with the different types of auctions we have. We have our 3 premier auctions every year. Those are our big fancy ones. 6-figure guns to, some pretty sort of like Colt Pythons, things that are definitely still sporting, still usable. That's our high end, always high condition. We also have 2 regional sales every year, which is what we like to call either beginning collector guns. So there'll still be a Henry rifle for maybe $10,000 to $20,000, but it won't be the super, super pristine condition that you'll find in a premier. Those regionals also have lots of everyday shooters. You need a duck gun, you need a new deer gun, you need an everyday carry. Those will be in the regionals as well. They're very, very accessible. As far as which one is there more of, I'm just tempted to say the regional off the top of my head. I mean, I think that price level of collecting will appeal to a lot more people than the prices that are present at a premier auction.
Right, and they don't feel like as much risk maybe going in because they can see something that they maybe want, but if someone else goes a little bit higher, it's all right. There's going to be others.
Yeah, very true.
It's not like you're going in looking for one engraved gun, and if you lose out on it, that's pretty much it.
That's true. I think the only exception would be there might be super rare guns in a regional, but because they're not at the high condition, they are super accessible to someone who might not otherwise have that chance.
Right.
Last regional auction, we had like a Roper revolving shotgun. Very old. It didn't have even all its pieces, but for someone who either loved a Roper or collected revolving long guns of early 20th century, that'd be a really cool piece to have at a fraction of the price that you'd normally maybe find it.
Absolutely. Now, in terms of auctioning off firearms, we all kind of know how when you go to the gun store, you fill out the 4473 and you do all that. Mm-hmm. Are there any special considerations when you're auctioning off firearms as opposed to other material goods?
Yes. I mean, let me preface it by saying, because we primarily auction firearms, sure, there's some art and there's some ammunition and some Western gear and holster rigs and things like that. I can't speak 100% to what other rules or struggles might exist behind, like, say, art or lamps or things like that. But I know when auctioning off firearms are, of course, very, very heavily legislated. And if you don't, say the consequences of maybe not selling a lamp properly aren't as gross as
right.
If you happen to miss like you said, the 4473 when you're selling a gun. And the consequences of which, if we were to miss a gun law, no matter how innocently, it could have pretty big consequences for the business as a whole. So we are always on top of our game as far as that's concerned.
So you're still considered an FFL in the eyes of the government, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, if someone's looking to purchase a firearm through an auction, say I look through your catalog and I see a few revolvers that might be going up, what are some obstacles I can encounter? You said that there's the vocabulary gap, so you may not know some of the vocabulary, but what are some of the difficulties you see first-time auction buyers have when they come to see you?
Well, one I'd say is other bidders. Yeah. That's probably the big one. The vocabulary is part of it. Sometimes not knowing what tools and perhaps tricks are available for auction. I call them tricks, but they're obviously pretty... we make them even available on our website. So let's say one of these tips would be what we call being on the right foot of an auction. So if you and I are bidding on that lot of pistols, Ryan, and I bid $1,800 and you wanted $1,900, the next bid increment, because we only use fixed bid increments, would be $2,000. After $2,000, the bid increments go up by $250. So while we've been going for $100 increments, the next one would be $2,250. So you would have to make a jump of $2,250, which might put you off the bidding and which might give me the lot. So that's a little kind of trick. So instead of you bidding $1,900, you might just say $2,000 and make me make the jump. It's just one of those little tactics you can use to maybe push somebody off a bid. That's kind of handy. So people who are experienced with auctions will know that. Sometimes it's tools like we just started using outbid notifications for our sealed bidders. People who bid, it's another vocabulary thing. If you're bidding before an auction online or you call us or via email, and you're not present, that is a sealed bid. In other words, we will bid up to that number for you, but still try to win it as low as possible.
So basically, people can also, that we talked about before, I've been to a few auctions where they'll have a whole table full of people who are employed by the auction house or either have representatives, and there's telephones.
Yes.
And so people will actually call in and do bids on the telephones, and that's just maybe for reasons of they live across the country and this is where that auction is.
There's that. There's also a lot of gun collectors value their privacy as well. So they're bidding over the phone. They aren't able to come and bid in person, so they may have a representative inspect the gun in person during our preview day or before most auction days. And they'll bid over the phone. So I guess that, you're correct, is another potential obstacle, but I think it still falls under the other bidders type category. You're bidding against other live bidders, live phone bidders, live internet bidders who would be through like third parties like Proxy Bid or Invaluable, plus all the sealed bids we take before an auction, which has been averaging about 14,000 bids before the auction ever even opens.
Oh, wow.
So those are, and that can be a little lower, but it's generally quite a bit higher than the 14,000. Some of the tools, though, that experienced auction goers might have too. If you're looking for a gun, say you're looking for a Burgess folding shotgun, we don't get those a whole lot. And instead of searching every single auction catalog, you can call us. And when we get one in, we'll put a note in to give you a holler when one of those arrives. That's a pretty helpful tool. Like I said, along with those outbid notifications, that's another thing we've started to help people, get the guns they want. If they know they're outbid and they want to bid some more, well, that's fine. We'll let them do that and try to help them win that gun.
Well, and that's the thing, especially, if you're looking for that one specific gun, you would have to be going through the inventory every time it's updated. And so the next question I have is, one thing you kind of find at auctions, you find the more collectible firearms like we've talked about. What's the most common way for Rock Island to acquire such firearms? Do you guys get individual pieces in, or do you find that they pick up oftentimes more just entire collections and then pick and choose from that collection?
Sure. I'd say individual consignments. We have 5 collections this upcoming auction, one of which, the G.S. Cook collection, is only Winchester 1885s. So there are big, fantastic collections like that. Or the Ralph Shattuck collection. Mr. Shattuck was an icon for the Luger collecting community. So he had a huge collection of German military weapons. We don't find a whole lot of collections like that relative to regular gun buyers who might not be a single gun, but they'll have, a dozen guns, and they'll consign those through us. So I guess very rarely do you get like a true single gun consignment, but often when we do, those can be pretty darn exciting. The single gun consignments that we like are the ones that are, quote unquote, the Cobra in the garage. When you find that old Ford Mustang Cobra that someone's had out in the barn for years and years, it's when these guns that just come out of somebody's attic, grandpa's gun that, well, we didn't really know what it was worth, but we've had it a long time. We don't know what to do with it. Those can be pretty exciting.
Now, so that basically the auction house doesn't own the firearms, but typically people consign them to you, right?
Yes. In fact, we encourage consignment because you will make more money that way as a consigner. If you're selling us the gun, it's kind of like selling any retail business a gun, where you would have to we would have to buy low to sell high to try to make as most money as possible on the firearm. When you're consigning, then we're kind of on the same team. The more money you make, the more money we as an auction house make. So we see consignment, so everybody's on the same team, the same page.
Now, I know Rock Island's been known recently for selling in batches of guns, meaning that you may have 3 guns that are auctioned up as a group. Do you find that attracts more bidders, or do you think that the single guns tend to attract more interest?
For the batches of guns, they've been doing for some time in our regional auctions. The regional auctions, of course, those guns have typically a lower value than what's going to be in our premier auctions, and they batch those together not only to save a little time. If we sold all the guns in our regional auctions individually, it would be more than a 3-day affair. You'd maybe be looking at easily 4, maybe even 5 days of just straight single gun sales. So it saves us time, and time is money. We try to have to get into the business aspect of it, sort of a minimal lot price, per lot, so just so they can keep things going at a good pace for everybody, make as much money for the consigners as possible. It might detract some people who are only looking for one gun in a lot, but we're also selling to a lot of gun shops, a lot of LGS, a lot of dealers who will pick up 5 or 6 guns at a time to turn around and sell them in their shops, wherever that happens to be. We have people coming from across the nation to bid in those regional sales.
Yeah, I know there are quite a few shops around here that will go to auctions and pick stuff up and just resell them in their shops. And sometimes there's some pretty cool stuff they see come through.
Oh, absolutely. And that's not to say that any individual buyer couldn't do the same thing. Obviously, you don't want to be turning around and selling too many guns, or else our friends at the ATF will want you to have certain licenses and dealership goodies.
Right.
But there's nothing to stop you from doing that from time to time to get the guns you want and make up some of the price difference as well.
So, in your opinion, what are some of the coolest, most rare, or maybe most expensive firearms that you've seen come through Rock Island in recent years? Because you had quite a display at NRA with some Golden Lugers and other. I think there was a Colt Baby Patterson.
There was, and that Colt Baby Patterson was well, for one, extravagant, just silver banded and tiny, and you don't know how small it is until you see it. And in its case and with its accessories, that was actually the earliest known engraved Colt ever, like of Colts, just because Pattersons were so early in the Colt history. So that Baby Patterson is very early for an engraved firearm. That was a phenomenal gun. Actually, the most expensive gun that we had ever sold was a much, much larger Patterson. Let's see, that was, okay, the month escapes me, but that was a cased number 5 Texas Patterson. So it had the long 9-inch barrel. It had 6 silver bands inlaid into it. These antique ivory grips with a shell carved into them, and it was gorgeous. It wasn't engraved, oddly, which normally you think wouldn't make it as valuable as an engraved Colt. However, because it wasn't engraved and it had the silver bands, that made it more rare and actually increased the value. That sold for $805,000.
Oh, wow.
And that's the most expensive gun I've seen come out of Rock Island auction. Actually, the one that held the title before that was there were 2 in the same auction. It was September of 13. There was this beautiful, beautiful gold-plated Conrad Ulrich. He had signed and engraved this 66 Winchester with just this running scene of deer, and these like Victorian nudes were engraved on this. The deer were like atypically like breaking the frame that they were placed in, so it really looked like they were moving. It was just stunning gun. The wood was beautiful, and everybody thought that was going to go for the highest price of the auction. And there was also with it an iron frame Henry, not with it in the same lot, but just in the same auction. They're both from the Mac McCroskey collection, who is a renowned Winchester collector who has passed since. And then there's this iron frame Henry rifle. And iron frame Henrys are rare in and of themselves. You don't see them that often, and when you do see them, they look gray because they don't have any of the finish left on them. They just look gray, and that's generally what you're going to see. This iron frame Henry that Mac McCroskey had was black. It was black almost like the day it left the factory, which is insane. There's no reason for that. It's what I call a miracle gun. To be made in the 1860s, well, early 1860s no less, because the iron frame Henrys were only made early in the production, and in an era, many eras without air conditioning or humidity control or white gloves, or in a time that it went through a civil war, somehow it didn't see use, and it stayed in amazing condition and didn't rust out. There's just no reason. It's a miracle gun. And the gold frame, the gold washed 66, sold for $437,000, which is a fantastic price. I don't think anybody was disappointed with that. But that iron frame Henry sold for over $603,000. This just plain, ironwood and blued gun sold for $603,000. I always thought that was quite a trip. It was unexpected, but it was well deserved for that gun to be in the condition it was in.
I mean, that would be like finding a Colt single action Army from back in the day that had all its bluing and was just NRA 100%. Yeah,
and even now consider if it was like a Colt single action Army that less than 200 were made. Like if it was, obviously there's lots of Henrys, but the iron frame Henrys specifically are a subset that's even even rarer. It's and it's a beloved gun. It's Henry. It's got a part of the Winchester heritage, and people want a part of that, and people want a part of Henry's, and it was one thing on top of another. You had condition, you had the Winchester history, which is Winchester, what we call one of the quote unquote blue chip guns. Winchesters and Colts. It's just a solid company, and the values just steadily go up, just like those blue chip stocks.
Go ahead. I was just curious what your coolest one you thought was. Was it that Henry, or because I know I'm not really embarrassed to say it, but I think the little baby Browning 25s are pretty cool. And that's just my opinion. Was it the Henry, or did you have a different one that you thought might be in your opinion, your coolest firearm you've seen come through?
You'll be pleased to know it is actually a handgun. It was in that same auction as that Henry and that Winchester, which were sold on different days, but we opened that auction 9 a.m. Friday morning with a Smith & Wesson that was, first of all, it was stunning to look at. It had been, Smith & Wesson had actually made it for the Columbian Exposition, the 1893 World Fair in Chicago, and of course Chicago was out to prove itself. It had just had the Chicago fire a couple decades earlier. In 1893, everybody was selling like 400 years of Columbus's landing when it was still popular to do so. And so it was at the World's Fair, and a lot of things it was going to be the finest of the fine that Smith & Wesson had, and they did. It was Gustav Young engraved, which is already phenomenal, but he also gold inlaid some of it. It's something to behold. It was a big event. I mean, the Ferris wheel debuted at this event, along with, like, what else? Cracker Jack, Pabst Blue Ribbon debuted there, and so did the electric chair. So it was definitely a big event to go to. And after that, it was bought by a kind of colorful guy named Tex Rickert, who made his fortune in gold in Alaska. Long story short, he would eventually go on to be a big, like the Don King of his day. He was a big boxing promoter. He started the New York Rangers hockey team. He built the third sort of iteration of Madison Square Garden. Like, he had some money, and he spent it on the Smith & Wesson, which was gorgeous. But not before one of his gold ventures brought him to a small town in Nevada called Goldfield, Nevada. We met a guy named Claude Inman, who essentially founded the town. When he got there, it was a town called Grandpa, and there were no houses. It was all tents. So he arrived with a lot of lumber, and he built the first structure. And the story goes, he drove the first nail with his 6-shooter at 10 paces, and he called that peace insurance, so nobody would mess with his stuff. And that's how he made Claude Inman started making his money, was buying lumber up as he could and building people's structures. He was offered 5 times the cost to build the town's first saloon, and he declined, and he built the first water tower instead, like a civic structure. So he was definitely dedicated to the blossoming of this town, which is why he started it in the first place. He had a hunch there would be gold there, and the hunch turned out correct. Long story longer, it turned out to be this booming gold town with 20,000 people, bars, brothels, 24-hour gambling. And it sounds cliche as like an old West town, but there are opium dens, there's hoodlums, and of course there were 350 different mine owners. So that gives you an idea of just the sheer amount of gold that was being dug out of the Nevada earth at that point in time. And workers were stealing a lot of gold. They had these metal lunch boxes with these, firm metal handles, like metal, and they were taking so much gold. Inman states in like later interviews that these steel handles were hanging like ropes, like they were tight like ropes. There was so much. So basically, the mine owners got together and said, "You know what? We want to make you sheriff." He said, "No, I'm good, thanks." So I'm dedicated to town, but I don't want to do that because with all those bars and brothels and everything, he would not have been a popular fellow. They said, "Tell you what, we'll give you $10,000 a month, or 40% of all the gold you recover." And this is in 1906, so $10,000 a month is a lot of money now, but in 1906 it was just kind of unfathomable. But despite that, he never took the $10,000 a month. He always took the 40% because that was always more money.
Oh, absolutely.
So he was recovering a lot. The robbers didn't like this. They hired a hitman against him, but he was kind of beloved by the town folks because he didn't go through the town, bringing justice with the barrel of a gun. On the contrary, he's very soft-spoken. He was very kind. The hitman they hired against him, he turned that guy's life around and met him later in life and met his wife and kids in his small business. He's very much beloved. And within a year, the town of Goldfield, so in 1907, they presented their sheriff, Claude Inman, with this Smith & Wesson pistol that had been at the World's Fair and owned by Tex Rickert. This guy, it's just been through so many characters. I just love the history of that gun. And I should mention, too, the town people, before they gave it to him, they put Tiffany snakeskin grips on the handle.
Wow.
So not only is the gun gorgeous, and it was at the exposition, but it had been through this rich character, and then it was through this sheriff who has, 100 stories about him. I thought that's probably been the coolest gun I've seen. And that's not because it was a huge technical innovation, not because it's, was used in any military conflict. It was just... it's such a great history behind it. Like, you could go on, and like I already have, for quite some time about that gun, or about just Mr. Inman, and you wouldn't be disinterested. He's got a great story behind him, and so does the gun.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, hadn't you written a few things for Rock Island on the Daisy 22 caseless ammo? Yeah, it was the Daisy Heat-On, actually, is who they were owned by. It was called the VL-22. Well, I think they eventually called it a 22 rifle, but Daisy wanted to market it as just an air gun. The ATF had other ideas. Yeah, that was really interesting. I remember reading that article, and I was like, wow, that's pretty cool that Daisy was actually considering doing something with actual propellant as opposed to just an air rifle. Yeah, the chemist who thought it up, and I will butcher his name if I try to say it,
But the Van, it's like Van Holle, I'm sure. That's what VL stands for, and the rifle is his last name. He thought it up, and he approached Daisy, and they yeah, this seems like a really good idea. And they had, visions of using it in the military and construction, because this compound isn't just ignited or catalyzed by heat. It can also be done electronically or chemically. So they had all these ideas for applications, and then the ATF said, well, that's not an air rifle. That's pretty much a firearm because you have a propellant. And so they stopped making them after it was just over a year, despite being in development for about 9 years.
Yeah, I'll definitely put a link to that blog post in the show notes. I found it really, really interesting.
It's a fun one. There's not many caseless ammo firearms, let alone by Daisy of all people. But that's one of them. And it's a neat history on that one.
So there's a September auction coming up. What are the dates on that, and what are some cool or interesting lots that will be up on the block there?
It's September 11th, 12th, and 13th, so Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 3-day sale. September 10th is actually our preview day. We open up the building to the public, and you can inspect, pick up, touch, shoulder any gun in the auction. You got to be able to inspect it and touch it if you're going to buy it. Even if you're not going to buy anything, we always encourage people to come down, look at these things, study them, get an education on something you might not normally have known about. It's kind of a rotating museum that you can touch, or a museum in some cases that you can buy or bid on. It's September 10th to September. After the preview day, we always have a barbecue in September. Free food. I think they just ask for a donation. Usually those proceeds go to the NRA ILA, but it's always free of charge to come by on the preview day.
Yeah, the preview days of the auctions are really cool because you'll get to see guns that you never otherwise would have gotten to handle. And like you said, even if you're not planning on buying them, just being able to actually handle a piece of history is really phenomenal. I know I got to handle at one auction. There was an MP40. And where else would I get to handle a World War II vintage MP40?
Oh, indeed. And in this auction, too, specifically, there are over 60 Title II weapons. So now, granted, some of those are any other weapons or some short barrel shotguns specifically, but this one has a ton of machine guns. There's an FG-42. There's a ton of World War I. There's Vickers. There is, a Browning 1919, Hotchkiss, some Japanese, there's Type 92, Type 99, just so many things that you might not normally be able to see. So I guess that would be the answer to one of those things. Cool things to see in the auction and even touch if you came to preview day. The one that seems to be making quite a splash right now is the M1 Garand that was purchased by John F. Kennedy.
Yes, I saw a write-up, I believe, on the Firearms blog about that.
Yeah, it has been everywhere. The Daily Mail, Field and Stream, Guns.com, the Firearm blog, Truth About Guns. It's just been making the rounds, and rightfully so. It's a piece of American history, being an M1 Garand. Two, it's got an interesting story with how Kennedy came to receive it and the special treatment that gun got before it got to him. And then it's Kennedy. What more visible president could you possibly want in American history besides maybe Washington or Lincoln?
Right. It looks to be presentation grade, right?
Yes. The wood's been treated. They sanded out because it was allegedly a used M1 Garand, but that's all been taken down, and then it was given a silicone covering, so it looks very varnished and very nice. The metal is blued. It's not Parkerized. It's been glass bedded. It doesn't look like your typical M1 Garand, which puts some folks off, but it is. The wood is gorgeous. If it wasn't so shocking to see it on an M1 Garand, I think more people would be just enamored by it. But I think enough people are already with the amount of attention it's getting.
So before we wrap up here, where can people find more information about Rock Island Auction Company, and how can they keep updated on auctions and maybe see the new arrivals and stuff like that?
Sure. I'd probably recommend we have just a weekly email. You can sign up for either on Facebook or our website, and those are the two other best ways, www.rockislandauction.com. You can also search us on Facebook. We try to have a pretty visible social media presence to bring attention to all these gorgeous guns, and just, if nothing else, share these pictures and let people see what some of this history and this heritage and the artistry. For Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Reddit, Pinterest, you name it, Google Plus, you name it, we're on it, and we're sharing gun pictures and hopefully in some really good history too.
Well, I didn't think you had it in you.
I'm your Huckleberry. Why, Johnny Ringo, you look like somebody just walked over your grave.
Fight's not with you, Holiday.
I beg to differ, sir. We started a game we never got to finish. Play for blood, remember?
I was just fooling about.
I wasn't. Say when. Show Johnny Ringo who's boss with Patriot Patch Company's Huckleberry Patch, a must-have for any range bag. Pre-order yours today at patriotpatch.co.
So, Joel, I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show. It was really a great discussion, and I think the listeners are really going to enjoy it. We'll have links in the show notes for anybody who wants to go find out more information about Rock Island and maybe see what's coming up in their upcoming auction in September and see if there's something they might be interested in.
I hope so.
So thanks again, Joel. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ryan. Anytime you want to talk guns, just give a holler.
Gun Guy Radio says thank you and proudly displays artwork and graphics designed by Ryan Cross of Hunter of Design. hunterofdesign.com.
So that about wraps up this episode of Gun Guy Radio. Remember to subscribe to us on iTunes so that you never miss a show, and please leave us a review there as well, gunguyradio.com/iTunes. Please consider joining the NRA and the Second Amendment Foundation. There are links there in the show notes. And don't forget to check out the other shows on the Firearms Radio Network. Also, be sure to check out the Patriot Patch Company, started by FRN's own Jake Challand and Ryan Cross. Patriot Patch Company offers high-quality 3D PVC vinyl patches with Velcro backing that is sure to satisfy any taste. Their new I'm Your Huckleberry patch is available for pre-order and is a personal favorite. Patriot Patch Company is also running a pre-order right now on the Firearms Radio Network t-shirts, which are really high quality. I can't wait to get mine. And the Patriotic Flag Patch 4-pack. Be sure to check them out at www.patriotpatch.co. This is Ryan Machad, and I'll see you next week.
This has been a production of the Firearms Radio Network. You can find more information at firearmsradio.tv. Freedom. How does one maintain freedom? That's a question our founding fathers pondered over 200 years ago. They believed the solution was in our Constitution and its amendments. We exercise the freedom of speech every day here at FRN, along with the right of the people to keep and bear arms. Preserving freedom. We believe the Second Amendment could possibly be that one amendment that protects all the rest. Help us to preserve America as a shining light on the hill. We do our part by providing entertainment and information that supports the Second Amendment every day. Preserving freedom. What do you believe? Get involved. Show your support at patreon.com/FRN.